Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session 16 of the Delhi State Legal Services Authority Learning Series. The topic for today, cyber security and law, challenges during COVID-19 and legal response. You all know how much we are using our technology to get in touch with each other these days, be it for our court proceedings, be it for be it for court proceedings or be it for learning, be it for development of law, we all have been in front of our screens, our laptops, our mobile phones. So with this, our member secretary and our team at Delhi State Legal Services Authority coined this program thinking that this cyber security for at individual level and also the cyber development and the cyber law, which we generally use in the court proceedings, the challenges during COVID-19 and the legal response with which we need to be ready with needs to be addressed. For this, we have expert with us, Dr. Pavan Duggal. He's Advocate, Supreme Court of India. But before we get to our speaker, I would request the Member Secretary, Shri Kanwaljit Arora ji, to share with us his aim and vision behind this session for today. Over to you, sir. 1 second, sir. I think, yeah. So I'll just, yes, over to you.
Dr. Pavan Duggal, Secretaries of all District Legal Service Authorities and my dear panel lawyers. Very good afternoon to all of you. Today, we all know that we are living in a world which is affected by COVID-19 virus, where social distancing has become a norm for safe living. And during these challenging times, our dependency, as Shreya was just telling, on technology that has increased tremendously. And with this dependency, the potentiality and propensity of cyber crimes that has increased many folds. जैसा कहते हैं ना, जहाँ पे अच्छाई है वहाँ बुराई भी है. Where there is good, there is evil. So more and more we are dependent on technology. There is more potentiality of cyber crimes. So internet, no doubt, that has given ourselves easy access to everything while sitting at one place. Social networking, online shopping, storing data, gaming, online studying, online jobs, every possible thing that one can think of can be done through the medium of internet. Internet is used in almost every sphere, as we have switched over from seminars, the physical interaction which we used to have earlier, to webinars. So we are using internet day in and day out. Court proceedings, during court proceedings, all these court proceedings these days are being held through internet only, through video conferencing only. So internet, it is being used in almost every sphere. And with development of the internet and its related benefits, also developed the concept of cyber crimes. So, and cyber crimes, they are committed in different forms. अगर हम थोड़े टाइम पहले की बात करें, so there was lack of awareness about the crimes, that how they can be committed through internet. But in the arena of cyber crimes, जहाँ तक इंडिया की पोजीशन है, we are not far behind other developed countries where instances of cyber crimes, they are increasing day by day. अगर हम सिर्फ अपने women folk की बात करें, a recent study that shows that out of total internet users, 29% are women. Only 29% are women. There are, of course, several reasons for this cyber illiteracy, but it cannot be denied that cyber crime is one of the major reasons for the same. That dependency on this technology of women folk is only 29%. So every day we find that several women, they delete their social media account under the threat of misuse of their data. और अगर हम इसको further study करें, 73% of the women, they are affected annually by the menace of cyber crime. But most highlighting fact is that only 30% of them, they go ahead and make complaint. There are again several reasons for that, for non-reporting of these offences, mostly by the women folk, and it may be because of the hesitancy and shyness of the victim, and also because of her fear of defamation, the stigma that is attached. Many times she considers that she herself is accountable for the crime that is done to her, though that is not the thing. She herself is not at all accountable. She is also equally entitled to use the technology as we all do have. So women, they are more vulnerable to attacks of the cyber crimes. Cyber criminals, they constantly threaten and blackmail the victim with different names and identities. Women, they generally fear that reporting the crime will affect their family life. They also question कि जी ये detect हो पाएगा नहीं हो पाएगा, whether they would be getting proper and adequate support from their family and friends. However, while saying so, having said so, we must not forget that cybercrime is gender neutral. Every day we see and hear that even small children, irrespective of their gender, are subjected to cyberbullying, trolling, or cyber pornography. Also, there has been a tremendous increase in cyber frauds these days with increase in e-commerce transactions. Again, क्योंकि लोग बाहर जाना पसंद नहीं कर रहे हैं आजकल, most of the transactions they are doing while sitting in their home, online shopping that is being done, and with this increase in of dependency on technology, the cyber frauds they have increased. Now अगर हम bitcoins की बात करें, they are long favored currency for darknet marketplaces, with cyber criminals taking advantage of its pseudonym nature and decentralized organization to conduct illicit transactions, demand payments from the victims, and launder the proceeds of their cyber crimes. They feel that whatever they are earning through these cyber frauds, they can deal with it, they can launder their money through these bitcoins. So almost all the apps जो भी हम download करते हैं on our mobile phones, on our laptops, they also instigate us to share our personal data, which can be later misused. So a major question that arises is, how should we protect our privacy in these times when dependency on technology has become more of a necessity than a luxury? Then we see the other aspect of it, revenge porns. Revenge porn has also become very common these days, where sexually explicit images or videos of individuals are distributed without their permission. They are uploaded on the websites, they are transmitted on the website. The sexually explicit image or video, they may be of a partner of an intimate relationship, which has been made either with consent or knowledge of the subject, or it may be made without the consent or knowledge of the partner. Motive उसके काफी सारे हो सकते हैं of uploading it, of using those particular images to blackmail the other person. The motive may be to coerce the other partner to continue with the relationship, though otherwise he or she is say unwilling to continue with it. Or another motive can be to punish them for ending the relationship, or to silence them, that so that the other person should not report it to the police. So meaning thereby that we need to, with all these things, we need not only to safeguard ourselves against such crimes, but also there is a need to empower ourselves so as to get justice to all those victims, all those legal aid seekers who will come to us who are victims of such crimes. So it is for this reason that we thought it appropriate. We have chosen this topic for today's session, that is cyber security and law challenges during the COVID-19 period. And friends, in order to educate us in this field, we are fortunate to have amongst us an expert on this subject, Dr. Pavan Duggal. He has the expertise not only regarding identification, but also how the investigations should be done. He is an authority on how to collect the evidence for the investigating officers, how to preserve the same during the period from its collection till it is produced in the court, and then producing the same in court without compromising the admissibility of that e-evidence, electronic evidence. So we are fortunate that he accepted our request and consented to say apprise us, to make us more aware through his expertise on the subject. So I request Shreya to formally invite the eminent speaker for the day. So thank you, Shreya. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. So we all know Dr. Pavan Duggal. He is a practicing advocate, Supreme Court of India. He has made an immense impact with the international reputation as an expert and authority on cyber law, cybersecurity law, artificial intelligence law, and e-commerce law. Dr. Duggal has been acknowledged as one of the top 4 cyber lawyers around the world. World Domain Day recognizes him as one of the top 10 cyber laws around the world. He's the founder and chairman of the International Commission on Cybersecurity Law. He's also the president of cyberlaws.net and has been working in the pioneering area of cyber law, cybersecurity law, and mobile law. Dr. Duggal is also heading the Artificial Intelligence Law Hub and Blockchain Law Epic Center. His empanelment as a consultant to UNCTAD and UNISCAP Cyber Law and Cybercrime, respectively, membership of the INFACT Legal Working Group of the UN, CEFAT, consulting as an expert with the Council of Europe in cybercrime, inclusion in the Board of Experts of European Commission Dr. E-Commerce, and his work as an expert authority on the Cyber Law Primer for E-Asian Task Force, and as a reviewer for Asian Development Bank, speaks volume of his worldwide acceptance as an authority. Dr. Pavan is the president of Cyber Law Asia, Asia's pioneering organization committee to the passing of dynamic cyber laws in the Asian continent. Dr. Duggal is also the member of WIPO Arbitration and Mediation Center, panel of neutrals. In association with International Telecommunication Union, he also conducted 2 training and sensitization programs for the elected judges and officers of the International Court of Justice at The Hague, Netherlands, on 23rd May 2019. As an internationally renowned cyber law and cybersecurity subject expert at the world stage during the high-level policy statement delivered by him at the World Summit on Information Society, organized by International Telecommunication Union, UNESCO, UNCTAD, and UNDP in Geneva, Switzerland in 2015. He has been recommended the need for coming up with an international convention on cyber law and cybersecurity. He is a thought leader. He suggested that India requires a new legislation that is wholly dedicated to cybersecurity. He has conducted 21 different online courses at cyber law security, which have been subscribed by more than 17,000 students from 165 countries, speaking 46 national languages with excellent ratings. He is also the member of Global Ethics.net, global network of persons and institutions interested in various fields of applied ethics. He has been the member of Public Interest Registry.org Advisory Council. He is a member of ICT Policy and Governance Working Group of UN ICT Task Force. He is the legal and policy consultant to the Internet Marketing Project, which is examining the next level of Internet. He has been invited to be an associated fellow of the Center for Asia Pacific Technology, Law and Policy at Singapore. He is a member of panel of arbitrators of the Regional Center for Arbitration, Kuala Lumpur, and Asian Domain Dispute Resolution Center in Hong Kong. He is a panel member of Permanent Monitoring Panel for Information Security, World Federation of Scientists. He has been associated with the Ministry of Communication, Information Technology, Government of India on Cyber Laws and Electronic Governance Legal Issues, and a member of Advisory Committee on E-Governance in Karnataka, constituted by the Government of Karnataka, as also a member of Information Forensic Working Group on E-Information Systems Security and Audit Association. He is a member of Multi-Stakeholder Steering Group of the Asia Pacific Region Internet Governance Forum. He heads his law firm, which has practice areas amongst other in cyber law, business process, outsourcing law, intellectual property rights, information technology law, information security law, defense, biotech, and corporate law. So he's regular on the lecture circuit. He's spoken at over 2,000 conferences, seminars, and workshops in the last 7 years. He has lectures extensively in the various renowned law colleges. As a writer, he has made his mark with 130 books on various aspects of the law in the last 12 years. He has contributed a continuing weekly column on diverse aspects of law titled Brief Cases to the Economic Times for the last 7 years. We are indeed privileged today, sir, to have you amongst us for our great lawyers. And in fact, for all our secretary judges, we're all indeed privileged to have you among us and to learn from you over the subjects. Sorry, just give 1 second. Over to you, sir. You can begin now.
Thank you, ma'am, for your kind introduction. Thank you, Silva, for your vision and thought process. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to come and share my thought process. I thought as lawyers, we know a lot of things. So let me share with you what's happening in different parts of the world, what is happening in India, so as to understand where we are and what we need to do. I have a small presentation and I will try to share that. So that's the topic today, cybersecurity and law, challenges during COVID-19 and legal response. This is a very vast topic, primarily because there is so much happening in this topic that we have to be basically alive and aware of what's happening. Let's begin with the most recent development. India has banned 59 Chinese apps. Now these have, of course, been under the Information Technology Act, but the banning has had huge results. TikTok overnight has lost its valuation, almost half of its valuation, about
Sorry,
2,000 crores of Indian.
in between. I'm so sorry, sir. I will interrupt you in between. Actually, can you refresh your page once because your voice is echoing? Maybe the sound effect, or maybe some other technology devices near. So if you can just refresh it once.
Refresh the page, okay?
Yeah, now it's fine because in between maybe some other technology devices open near your laptop. So if you can shut it and the voice will be clear. Now it's fine when you're talking to me.
Okay, hold on. Let me get all the devices away so that we should not have any kind of disturbance.
So
Thank you for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I was talking about the Chinese ban. Well, 59 Chinese apps have been banned and they have had impact. TikTok has lost almost a big chunk of its valuation. And more significantly, they're all losing money. Because
we again have a problem. Your voice is cracking. So we again have an issue maybe.
Okay. Is the voice better now? I thought.
Yeah, it's much better. Like when I'm here and you're speaking to me, there is no voice echoing.
Okay, let's try to see if our voice this time is slightly better.
Yes, sir. I'll have.
Okay, so we talked about the TikTok app and its ban, and it's having an impact upon the economic aspects of just the app companies and a variety of other aspects. A few days back, we had an attack on the National Highways Authority of India server. Of course, no data was lost, but by and large, it was still yet another wake-up call. India Bulls is a big company. They got hacked by.
The voice is still not clear. It's cracking in between. Maybe because of many servers around.
Sorry,
so the voice is not clear. Yeah, the voice is cracking in between because maybe the servers are.
Is the voice better now, please?
Yeah, much better.
Okay, thank you. So let's
do this.
We were talking about an attack on the NHAI server and data being lost. We also saw India bulls being targeted by a big ransomware attack. This attack was of such a nature that the company has lost a lot of data and, of course, lost a lot of business as well. Well, prior to India bulls, it was Cognizant, which was primarily focusing on, again, IT services, but they also got impacted primarily because of immense attack due to ransomware, which was focused on their networks per se. Honda globally got impacted because its entire systems were globally hit by a massive cyber attack, including.
I'm so sorry to bother you in between, sir. We can restart it. So can we refresh the whole screen once again? Like, can you just refresh it? We will start it afresh because your voice is really not clear. Yeah.
So what we will do is, shall we restart the connection once again?
No, I'll just hide myself and you speak for a second. Let me just.
Okay. Thank you. I thought this is technology, so that's fine.
Alone your voice. I think maybe is there some sound in the PowerPoint presentation?
No, the PowerPoint is completely silent. There's no sound in the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Otherwise,
so I think without the PowerPoint, it's fine. Or you can mail me the PowerPoint presentation, or otherwise you can just, let's start the, can you again share the screen? We'll do it again with the PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you. We will try to see. Are you in a position to see the PowerPoint as also the audio quality, please?
No, sir, not yet. It came in between and it is not being shared at the moment. Yes, I've got the link.
Okay.
Yes.
And
it's right. It's going to be live now.
Okay. So is the audio okay, or do you want us to do something on the audio, please?
There's an echo in the sound actually. Is there an extra mic you have? A mic. I think because the voice is echoing actually.
Shall we try putting in the other mic, please, that we had actually put in?
Yeah, sir.
Or this voice is okay? Is it an outside?
Otherwise, individually, yeah, it's off if you want. Like, I can also show the PPT from my end. If you want, you can just mail me the PPT and you can begin. I will keep showing the PowerPoint presentation.
Sure. What I'll do is I'll just email.
I'm sending you my mail ID.
Thank you. This is once again a wonderful way to show how technology, despite all our testings, invariably has the habit of just creating some new challenges.
So it's simply like traffic. I like to avoid traffic. We leave 5 minutes early. So I take it like that, sir. It's fine. We all are used to.
That's fine. I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
So we've sent you the presentation.
Yes, sir. So you can begin as soon as the presentation, I'll put it.
Okay.
You can
So what
continue.
we do is we'll begin to keep on talking, and as and when the presentation comes, you can let us know.
Yes, sir. So in fact, I would request you to start from the beginning because we
Okay.
could not hear the example which you gave us, sir.
Okay.
Right, sir. Thank
Sure.
you, sir.
Thank you.
We had a technical glitch today and we could not connect to the speaker, and then there was sound issue. So he's just got disconnected. We would be starting with the session. We've already started. Our member secretary has shared with you the vision. So in the meantime, we can keep you all occupied with the work which we are doing. And I can even request member secretary to rope in. So I'll just take him also here. And we can just let you know where we are busy with. So we can tell everyone
Yes,
how
yes,
busy are we.
definitely.
We've been working here so much.
Exactly, dear friends, as Shreya just told you that because of this technical glitch, I got some more opportunities to be interacting with all of you. I just want to tell all of you that recently, all of you must be aware that we are working on several fields apart from the jail inmates, in which all of you have already done wonderful job. We have another thing on our hand, that is regarding these construction workers. With respect to these construction workers, there is a writ petition going on before Honorable High Court, wherein Honorable High Court time and again has passed different directions, different orders. Yesterday, the matter was listed, day before yesterday rather, on 2nd of July, it was listed before Honorable High Court. And what there is a welfare board in place which is for these construction workers. Delhi government has already announced that for these construction workers, they would be giving some ex gratia payment, and this ex gratia payment can be given to only those persons who are registered with the welfare board. The problem with the welfare board is that they do not have adequate staff. We recently, what we have done is we have given our paralegal volunteers so that they can help out these construction workers in filling up the application forms for getting them registered with the welfare board and for the purposes of renewal of their registration, which they had already done. So with the assistance of our paralegal volunteers, large number of applications we have already filled. But the question again remains that these applications, now they got stuck with the welfare board. Unless and until they dispose of those applications, they renew the already registered workers registration, the workers would not be in a position to get that benefit. So there are around, as on date, there are around 17,000 applications for renewal only, which are lying to be disposed of before the welfare board. Welfare board does not have the authorized officers. So I was told by Honorable the High Court that I should suggest names of some of our panel lawyers. So we would be we would be selecting out of you only about 100 lawyers who would then be authorized by the board, and I'll make sure that you get the honorarium from the board as per the fee structure which we have in place on say daily basis, as and when we utilize your services on day-to-day basis. So whatever the fee structure is, you should be getting that honorarium from the board. That I'll make sure. My only request to you people is that once those of you who are authorized by the board for the purposes of verification of the documents or verification of the forms, just have an interaction with the secretary of the board. He'll tell you that what all you are supposed to do, you are required to do, and thereafter it is very simple job, nothing more. The only thing is that a construction worker who is already registered, he has simply applied for renewal. For the purposes of renewal, he needs to have a certificate to the effect that in the past 12 months he has worked as construction worker for 90 days. पिछले एक साल में उसको 90 दिन का काम किया होना चाहिए और ऑलरेडी वो रजिस्टर्ड है. सो रिन्यूअल प्रोसेस के लिए सिर्फ इतना ही आपको देखना है. बाकी सेक्रेटरी और द कंसर्न ऑफिसर्स ऑफ द कोर्ट दे विल अप्राइज यू दैट व्हाट यू आर सपोज टू डू. सो इतनी सिर्फ वेरिफिकेशन करनी है और एक दिन में dispose of as many applications as you can do and honorarium that you will be given. Second thing is with respect to jail visiting advocates and those of our panel lawyers who wants to have interaction with the inmates, with their clients. अब इसमें प्रॉब्लम ये आ रही थी कि बिफोर दिस कोविड-19 पीरियड आप जेल में जाके उससे इंटरव्यू कर सकते थे, उससे मिल सकते थे, बट बिकॉज ऑफ दिस सिचुएशन ये जो मीटिंग्स थी इनको बंद कर दिया गया. दैट यू कैन नॉट हैव फिजिकल इंटरेक्शन. ऑफ कोर्स आर जेल विजिटिंग लॉयर्स फॉर द पर्पसेस ऑफ ड्राफ्टिंग द बेल एप्लीकेशंस एज पर द हाई पावर्ड कमेटी. आप लोग जेल में जाके वो इंटरेक्ट करते रहे हैं उनसे. So what now we are making sure is that we are improving the technology which jail authorities have. Right now, every jail has one video conferencing cell, one video conferencing room. But because of the fact that all the say remand work, all the court proceedings, all those bail applications which are required to be disposed of by the court, where court requires personal presence of the accused. So the burden is there on that single video conferencing room of the jail. तो इस वजह से आप लोगों का इंटरेक्शन थ्रू वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंसिंग पॉसिबल नहीं हो पा रहा था. I had spoken to the jail authorities, I had spoken to DG prison, और we have started with those lawyers who are on the panel of High Court Legal Services Committee because appeals were to be filed और the bails of those persons जिनकी अपील हाई कोर्ट में पेंडिंग थी वो फाइल करनी थी. तो वी हैव स्टार्टेड विद those lawyers and in the near future all of you can interact with all those clients you have been assigned through video conferencing. तो आप को जेल जाने के उससे भी बच जाएंगे आप और from your home only, or you can use the offices of the concerned district with which you are empaneled. वहाँ से आप टेक्नोलॉजी यूज करके थ्रू वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंसिंग you can interact with your clients whose cases are assigned to you. So these are something, and apart from that there is another thing which in near future we are going to have, that is public defender system. So I just want you to be aware of this, that on the similar lines as we have the prosecuting agency, there is a public prosecutor who takes up the matter on behalf of the state against the accused. So on similar lines we are going to have public defender system. So there would be a chief defender for which interview has already been taken, and then 2 deputies and 2 assistants. So this will be an office of 5 advocates headed by a chief public defender, and of course we would be providing them with the paraphernalia, with the infrastructure, with an office, with a stenographer, with an office assistant and PN, etc. And then these 5 lawyers who has already been chosen for this, they are full-fledged working with us, and they are not supposed to have their independent practice during the period they are with us. So this system is started on the basis of as a pilot project, and we have started it from Southwest District, considering the fact that in Southwest District Dwarka we have sufficient space. We have carved out a space for our office, and in near future that office would be in place, and we initially would be giving say limited number of cases, say around 50 cases to these 5 lawyers who would be dealing with these 5 cases exclusively. They would be calling the family members of those persons to know what the probable defense of that accused is, and what is the next stage of hearing. As any normal client approaches a private lawyer, so these 5 lawyers who would be manning this public defender system would be interacting with their family members. I think we are back with Mr. Duggal, so I won't be taking much time. Over to you, Duggal Saab.
Thank you, sir. I think technology has this remarkable capacity of keeping you engaged. So I hope I'm more audible now. And if so, then I think I would want to continue with my thought process. Well, the bottom line is that it's a different world altogether that we are living in. And when we talk about COVID-19, COVID-19 has been a remarkable game changer in our lives, primarily because it's actually brought in something which we had not anticipated earlier. We have actually gone forward and seen a variety of changes. Let me at this very instance tell you of this massive changes that are happening in cyberspace. I think we have the presentation, so we can continue with the presentation. But before we continue, I think all of us have to be aware of a new ground reality. And the new ground reality is that cyberspace is changing irreversibly. And once cyberspace is changing irreversibly, it's bound to start impacting all of us. In fact, there is now a new kind of a world order that's begun to start coming in. And that is something that you will have to be more careful of as time passes by. Can we have the next slide, please? Well, this slide tells us that India has done something it hadn't done earlier. We banned 59 apps of China. Huge furor. Thousands of crores of revenues sadly stopped going from India to China. And of course, more significantly, the data that was actually being sent from your Chinese apps, your Chinese applications and even mobiles stopped getting being sent to China. So it's a huge, humongous investment, but we have begun to start seeing how this could have legal ramifications because these legal
So we still have echo. We still have a lot of echo, and like in fact, we're not able to hear you at all clearly.
Can we try something else? I gather.
Now it's fine. In fact, should I stay on the system? So you can share your screen alongside. You can only share your screen.
I think I can even do without the PowerPoint as well. If the audio is okay, and the PowerPoint is an issue.
Fine. In fact, you can share your screen right away, or I can share the screen with you, and we can do it together. So like this, and share screen. So we can do it like this. So I think it's going to be fine. I'll just do the slideshow. So now, can you please speak a bit? Let me check. How is it?
Okay, so I'm now speaking. So is there a audio issue or audio quality? That's fine.
Now it's completely fine. I'm going to make it the slideshow because right now it's not slideshow. So you can begin and you can let me know wherever you want me to change the slide.
Apologies to all the viewers. Thanks to technology. So we were talking about the irreversible changes that are happening in cyberspace. So the TikTok ban and these 59 other apps ban is only one particular step in this direction. The power has been exercised under Section 69A of the Indian Information Technology Act 2000. Next slide. We've also begun to see some massive changes happening in terms of attacks on servers. So the server of the NHAI or the National Highway Authority of India has got impacted in a big manner. It's amazing how we are also busy trying to track down the rate of coronavirus infections, and how while all of us we are busy with fear and panic, cyber criminals are weaponizing this fear and panic for the purposes of targeting us, our computer systems, our servers, and our data. Next slide, please. Well, the fact remains is that nobody is secure, and I think you should not have an expectation of being secure. You're all being targeted. Big companies are being targeted. You have this now a big company that's already got targeted, and this company has actually now lost more than 550 crore rupees thanks to the data. So and this company is not alone. Whether it's Cognizant, whether it's another company, everybody is potentially under attack. And I think as lawyers, as litigants, as people in the uh, connected with a legal ecosystem, please realize that you could also be under potential attack. Next slide, please. Well, all kinds of elements are happening. Today, shall I say, the flavor of the season is ransomware. Maze ransomware has hit big companies. In fact, as per one estimate, it's actually felt that every 14 seconds, one company anywhere in the world actually goes ahead and becomes a victim of ransomware attack. Next slide. Honda, with such a huge manufacturing facility across the world, has quickly realized that it's globally under attack. It got a global cyber attack targeted at its servers. The attack was so bad that the entire manufacturing had to be stopped globally in this regard. Next slide. Well, at the end of the day, the bottom line is the attack is going to happen on the critical information infrastructure. Even right now in the Indian context, with so much of tension happening in the Indo-China border, there is increased attacks that are being targeted at India. That's happening globally. That's happening even now. And therefore, we as digital stakeholders have to be ready for such an attack. Next slide, please. Well, you see, everybody is losing money. They're losing data. EasyJet has lost data of what? So many million of its users. And you look at India, about 2.95 crore Indians' true caller data has now been openly left up for anyone to grab on the darknet. Similarly, data of another data set of about 4.2 uh, crore Indians is now available on the darknet. So you go anywhere, you find your data is up on sale, is up for potential monetization. Next slide, please. Well, I think when I look globally, I'm realizing that these attacks are happening at a global scenario. These have targeted India. They've also targeted countries across the world, including Australia. Australia has recently complained of a big cyber attack that they say has all the manifestations of being sponsored by a state actor. They've not named the state actor, but it's for everybody's imagination as to which the state actor is going to be. Next slide, please. Well, ultimately, the plan is very clear. The plan is that you go ahead and you target the attack in the context of the critical information infrastructure. It actually started first in Estonia in 2007 with the attack on the banking network, and the entire the country was paralyzed, and the economy came to a grinding halt. We saw the attacks on the Ukrainian electricity grids, which led to huge areas of Ukraine under darkness. Recently, now this year, we've seen huge elements of darkness in one of the Latin American nations because their electricity grid had been targeted, and I think this is also going to happen more and more frequently. Hence, the target will be more on critical information infrastructure. Next slide. Well, everywhere, wherever I go, I find the same old story. Everybody is complaining about these attacks, these ramifications, and the beauty is that nobody learns. Nobody learns to realize that your data is on attack. So why can't we take a backup? Why can't we try to protect ourselves? But the mindset is, look, cybersecurity is a governmental responsibility. I can do any mess up on my mobile phone, but ultimately the responsibility of cybersecurity is with the government. I believe that is a wrong approach. You will have to quickly start realizing that cybersecurity is a collective responsibility, and each one of us have to start working in the direction of contributing in protecting and preserving cybersecurity. Next slide, please. Well, when you look at this particular slide, it's also again going to tell us that these kinds of attacks are happening. See, I want to tell you a story. The story starts on 15th of March 2020, where there's a big university hospital in the Czech Republic, in the city of Brno. It's called the Bruno University Hospital. That hospital got targeted by a big cyber attack. And the attack was so strong and so severe that all the operations and all procedures in the hospital had to be stopped, primarily because the IT networks came tumbling down. Next slide. This has now been replicated. This kind of attack is being replicated across uh, airports. So Prague airport found a big attack being targeted on it. Of course, they were able to thwart it, but there were some other smaller airports that have not been able to be successful in thwarting it. Next slide. We've also seen that this is the university hospital that I'm talking about. So, what is the game plan? You expect cyber criminals to be ethical, but you're wrong. Cyber criminals believe this is the golden time to make money, to target data. So they don't have any qualms about hitting medical facilities. In this case, this was the biggest COVID-19 testing facility in the Czech Republic that got targeted. And US is already complaining that China is targeting its laboratories and its new vaccine trials data so that that can be hacked and then that can be stolen. Already some kinds of vaccine related data is already being sold on the dark net. So you have to be now prepared for a new kind of normal that's going to hit us. Next slide. Nobody is secure, not even the US. In the US, the Department of Health and Human Services have been hit up with a massive attack. And so severe was the attack that they had to shut down some things. And it was a big distributed denial of service attack. In India, these attacks are also happening, but nobody is reporting. So you tend to get a wonderful feeling that we in India are absolutely safe, we are secure, and nothing happens. But nothing can be more farther than the truth. Next slide, please. Well, increasingly, I'm finding the focus is at various levels. The focus is at people, at organizations, at various governmental networks, and governments per se. And who's behind all these? It could be state actors, it could be non-state actors, they could be cyber criminal gangs, or they could be just individual hackers who are all wanting to, get rich in these very dark and unprecedented times. Next slide, please. Well, I think the scenario that's emerging globally is not very clear. Everybody is reporting about these breaches. Next slide. I've just given some of the samplings of other breaches that have happened in different parts of the world so that you can just have an idea of how things are being targeted in different parts of the world. Next slide, please. Well, certain in India is India's nodal agency on cybersecurity. That's come up with a new warning for all of us. They say that India is going to be hit with a huge imminent cyber attack, and they believe that that will be substantially based on the entire issue of phishing per se. Another Singapore agency, next slide please, has also now potentially told us there's a big attack that's going to happen. And why not? Suddenly, we go ahead and find that in India, people have jumped on into the video conferencing bandwagon without being aware. At least now you are using a different app, but most of the people are using the Zooms and the Google Meets of the world without being even understanding what are the legal terms and the legal policy issues. For example, a number of these video conferencing apps are telling you in their terms and conditions that their entire your data can be used and monetized by them. So I think as legal stakeholders, you have to be alive of the legal ramifications of using not so secure video conferencing. The other day, I was on a Zoom meeting with some lawyers, and we found that somebody was able to come in from Africa inside the Zoom meeting, create so much of noise and nuisance, and the entire Zoom meeting had to be shut down. Sometimes it's us because we don't put much attention on these advanced settings, and therefore we invariably land up finding ourselves being victims of things like Zoom jacking or Zoom attacking. Next slide. Well, today it's a bad world that we are living in, and fake news is all around us. So please do not get hit by fake news. Do not believe what you actually uh, are seeing primarily, because if you are going to disseminate fake news, you will become one in the chain. Yes, India does not have a fake news law, but that would not really prevent Indian authorities from registering a case under Section 468 of the Indian Penal Code, primarily because of electronic evidence. Ma'am, is my audio okay, or is there some issues?
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Well, work from home is actually bringing forward far more new realities. So, as all of us are working from home, as lawyers, as litigants, as digital stakeholders, let's not trust everything that we see on our work from home device. Let's start going ahead and protecting and preserving our device as also our data. How many of you working from home have taken backup of your data? Because the attacks that have happened have massively increased on devices which are used from work from home. Next slide. So be careful that just because you are working from home does not mean that you are safe, does not mean that you are secure. Why? Because at home, invariably, we are not putting so much of effort, time, energy in securing our devices, our phones, than we would normally put in offices. So today, it's a golden time for reaping for cyber criminals. Once we start realizing it, let's start protecting our data to the best extent possible. Next slide, please. Well, in the Indian context, we've seen some more cases and issues pertaining to work from home. This is so because in India, we have realized that we don't have a legal framework to protect ourselves from work from home. Work from home was always thought to be a luxury, an American thought process. Little did we realize that the national lockdowns will come in, and that we will be forced to work from home and thereby forced to access our corporate information, sensitive information. Companies have also been taken at a back foot. Well, now companies have become more mature. They are having work from home policies. They are identifying the roles, duties, and responsibilities of various stakeholders. Next slide, please. Well, the fact now remains is that cybersecurity has to be your new mantra. If you think that I'm not going to be concerned about cybersecurity, you really need to think again. Because if you're going to be stripped of your data or of your information, it could not just be a momentary loss. It can have huge long-term ramifications. So much so that your potential digital future could be compromised. Because in Indians, we have this strange habit. We tend to forget. We write everything on our computers, on our laptops, on our mobiles, including our credit card numbers, our debit card numbers, our passwords, thinking they are safe. Well, I think it's time for us to come out of our deep slumber. Next slide. No wonder in these times, cybersecurity law has been making some massive advances. This is a new subfield that's developing under the cyber law umbrella, which is only dedicated to the legal policy and regulatory nuances pertaining to use to protection, preservation, conservation of cybersecurity of devices and of networks per se. Well, India does not have a dedicated cybersecurity law. That does not mean that the world is not having any such stuff. A lot of countries are galloping ahead, much ahead of India, while India is still waking up from its deep slumber. Next slide. China is the foremost which has taken the maximum lead in the direction of cybersecurity law. In the last 5 years, it's come up with three distinctive national legislations on cybersecurity. And as late as the last week, China has now said it's introducing new rules under its cybersecurity law for purposes of companies to disclose all details pertaining to their cybersecurity preparations and frameworks. Next slide. Well, China, some other rules on cybersecurity have also come in about a couple of weeks back. So China is actually telling you a new way of how the law is developing. China, for the first time, has come up with the concept of cyber sovereignty, which says that look, my sovereignty does not only limit itself to the territorial boundaries of India, of China. It goes across to the entire cyberspace and to outer space as well. And I think that's the direction where different other people are going to go. Next slide. Well, Russia has already come up with a new law on data localization. Uh, in addition, it's now come up with also a new law called the RUNet law. Both of these laws are now currently being implemented with great vigor, and that itself is bringing forward far more new approaches. Well, they're telling the world, you want to do Russia, want to do business in Russia, please ensure that the data of Russians is physically located within the territorial boundaries of Russia. Next slide, please. So much so, countries like Vietnam have come up with a law on cyber security, which they're now increasingly toying up in terms of coming up with new approaches and new rules. There's been some pushback, but yes, this COVID-19 is giving time to different countries to start going ahead and experimenting with their cybersecurity legal frameworks as we go forward. Next slide, please. This is some sample of what things is happening, but Australia represents another good picture, a different picture. Australia says, let me focus on my encryption. So it's got its anti-encryption law, which has created a lot of controversy. But Australia is telling people, you are going to use encryption in Australia. Please give the back-end keys to the government. Otherwise, we will make it an offense, punishable with imprisonment and fine. Next slide. Well, when I look at the legal ecosystem that's evolving globally, I find nobody's behind. Even elements like Macau, Taiwan, they're also looking at effectively enforcing the dedicated new laws on cybersecurity. Next slide. Singapore has come up with a more balanced approach. It's also recently come up with some rules and regulations on its cybersecurity law, but that's one another way of how countries are looking at these legal developments, specifically with the advent of COVID-19. Next slide. Well, Egypt, that's doing its own bit under its cybersecurity law. Of course, it's been pretty much criticized because when you are going to use your cybersecurity law for arresting people, which has got no connection with cybersecurity, people are bound to make a noise. But then that's one another legislative approach in this regard. Next slide. Well, Ohio has now come up with a new law. It's a law that's focused specifically on its cyber safe harbor, which means it's telling people, if you comply with my law, then I'm going to give you actually a safe harbor. You cannot be sued or you cannot be exposed to legal consequences. Next slide, please. California, this year, during COVID-19 times, has come up with a new law. This is a law primarily which is implemented for purposes of enhancing the cyber security of IoT devices. So if you are a manufacturer of IoT device in California, you have to put in place reasonable security practices and procedures and features so that customers can have more control when they're using IoT devices. Next slide. California's law, of course, has been criticized because it's too less, too slow, too late. But at least California is now a world leader. No other country across the world has come up with a dedicated law on IoT. And the way it's implementing the same during COVID-19 times tells us that we could learn from the experience of California and start coming up with our own respective national legal frameworks in this regard. Next slide, please. Well, Philippines, a lot of times, like the Philippine example is also one such scenario. A lot of people, a lot of countries are now coming up with new legal frameworks. So we'll quickly go through some of the samples that I've collected for you. Philippines, in its new approach on cybercrime represents yet another way of how things are. But of course, when you start misusing the same by arresting people because they are calling the president a particular bad name or whatever, then I think people's confidence in your application of the law itself starts getting eroded. Next slide. You find Fiji, and they have actually built in Parliament their cybercrime bill, which has been tabled. That could be potentially coming up soon. Next slide. This is now a ground reality that all of us must be prepared for, which is increasing cybersecurity breaches. If we think that we are going to be safe, please really think again, because none of us are going to be safe. So it's like COVID. After this lockdown came to be relaxed, people started going around with gay abandon all across, and people have this fundamental thought process that everybody else will get COVID and they will not get COVID. Well, I think we have the same lies for cybersecurity breaches as well. If you think you're confident enough and you will not be targeted by cybersecurity breaches, you really need to think again and work your thought processes in this regard. Next slide. I've written a recent book. It's called New Cyber World Order Post COVID-19, which is on Amazon. On this book, I've argued and I've looked at a lot of these developments which have started taking place during COVID-19 times in cyberspace, but below the radar. And I've concluded that by the time we finish the fight against COVID-19, we would be entering into a new world, a new cyberspace. This will be the cyberspace where things would be dramatically different. States will become very powerful. Cybercrime, shall I say, breaches will constantly keep on happening. Cybersecurity violations will be rampant. There will be massive attack on people's digital rights and liberties, and you would be surprised. More and more people may actually now want to go on to the dark net for purposes of protecting their stuff. So I think we need to be aware of these new emerging ground realities. Next slide. In fact, when you look at this particular word, new cyber world order, it is very self-explanatory. It is talking of a new world order in cyberspace. Well, previously we have been hearing of a new world order, right from the Second World War onwards. But then that was used for a political thought process or a political ideology. Right now, the new cyber world order is something that the world would not have seen in the last 50 years. But this is going to dramatically change things. Next slide. Why do I say this? I say this because look at this list of countries. These are the list of countries that have come up during COVID-19 times with huge volumes of their legislative measures. Some of them have come up with direct laws on coronavirus, others have come up with secondary legislations. All these legislations are strengthening the hands of the government. For example, in Hungary, the government has passed a new law. The law says that the present government will continue to rule Hungary till such time the current wave of infections is conquered, and till such time further subsequent waves of infections are also going to be conquered. So I think we are now going to see a far more stronger nation state as we go forward. And as individuals, our negotiating power with states might be slightly lesser. Next slide. Well, it's cyber security as also cybercrime, which is constantly increasing. As per one estimate, there has been a 500 times or a 500% increase in cyber incidents during COVID-19 times, which means that this would include not just cyber crimes, but also cyber security breaches and all other kinds of unauthorized intrusions as well. Next slide. No wonder in these times with increasing cybercrime, when I look at in India, I find that during COVID-19, three topmost cyber crimes are phishing, identity theft, and fraud. More and more people are losing money because of phishing. Even half an hour back, I got a call from a lawyer whose mother has now lost 80,000 rupees, primarily because she believed what she saw was a governmental initiative. She clicked on that, and lo and behold, 80,000 of her money is now gone. So I think we have a responsibility to upon ourselves that we should not be clicking any kind of links or any kinds of attachments that come our way from people whom we don't exactly know who they are. Next slide. If you think that alone is sufficient, really think again. Artificial intelligence is complicating and simplifying things at the same time. There is massive work happening in artificial intelligence this year and last year. More and more cyber criminals have started using artificial intelligence at the darknet as part of their unique selling propositions or USPs while offering cybercrime as a service. So very quickly, countries have to now come up with new legal approaches to deal with artificial intelligence. Already, the state of Illinois during the COVID-19 times has passed a new law. It's called the Illinois Artificial Intelligence Video Interview Act, which is trying to regulate certain aspects of use of artificial intelligence for video interviewing in the state of Illinois. A very small application, but nonetheless, work has started. And of course, China is working massively on new norms on this entire issue of the liability of the app developers in the context of artificial intelligence. Next slide, please. Well, Internet of Things is quietly coming into our lives. Do you realize that when we were in lockdowns, a lot of people were using our IoT devices with gay abandon, and a lot of these IoT devices had been hacked at the back end. For example, one fundamental problem, or shall I say, an oversight that Indians do is to try to put their smart TV into their bedrooms, which is the worst thing that you can do to your own self. Because smart TVs are known to be hacked from outside, they're known to capture information, what they're able to see or hear, and there's a hidden camera there as well. And lo and behold, it gets transmitted via the internet. So you need to be very, very careful when you start using these IoT devices till such time the law comes up with new legal frameworks to actually cover the same. Next slide. Blockchain, fortunately, is now started maturing quite a lot. So in COVID-19 times, I'm seeing a lot of initiatives across the world where blockchain is now being used for electronic governance, for storage, and for a variety of other activities. I would begin to continue to stop to see the consolidation of blockchain. Of course, Bitcoins has been the most celebrated incidence or manifestation of blockchain, but more significantly, countries have yet to make up their mind on what you need to do on blockchain. Though I believe uh, things like when I look at the laws in Estonia, in Belarus, in Switzerland, and in Malta, I'm very, very clear that these laws are way ahead of the others in the game because Malta has passed up with three national laws on blockchain, and that particular set of trinity of laws has already propelled Malta to become the blockchain island of the world. Next slide, please. Well, if you think facial recognition was the past, think again. There will be more facial recognition now during COVID-19 and beyond. Therefore, the legal issues pertaining to facial recognition need to be appropriately addressed. There was some kind of a beta experiment in one of the airports in South India where they were capturing all your facial recognition data and you could just swipe through. But with so much of these privacy issues, and in India with Supreme Court declaring the right to privacy as a fundamental right, I think the legal nuances pertaining to facial recognition will have to be increasingly addressed as we go forward. Next slide. Darknet, ladies and gentlemen, may be your next frontier to conquer, to go, to explore, to discover. Why? Because yes, a majority of cyber criminal activity is happening on the darknet. But please realize darknet is also being used for both legitimate and illegitimate activities. But regulating darknet in terms of trying to regulate the misuse of darknet is one area that work has to substantially begin. The legal principles are evolving as we talk, but far more work needs to be done because, as per one estimate, the darknet is 500 times the size of the superficial net that you and I are using on a daily basis. So when I use and go to Google or Facebook or Instagram, that's a superficial net. But darknet is that underbelly of the internet where you cannot go using a search engine and you will have to specifically use a particular browser known as the onion router browser. So the legalities pertaining to the same will also have to be appropriately addressed. Next slide, please. In India, your question to yourself, what is India doing on cyber security? Well, India has done quite a lot. Way back in 2013, we had come up with the National Cybersecurity Policy, which was a great policy at that point of time. Unfortunately, we could not implement it, so it remained a paper tiger. But at least it is still there, though the government right now is coming up with a new National Cyber Security Strategy of 2020. In addition, we don't have a dedicated law on cybersecurity yet, but I think the government is increasingly looking in the direction of coming up with enabling legal frameworks specifically to deal with cybersecurity. Next slide, please. Well, the need of the hour is what? The need of the hour is that you will have to start looking at all issues pertaining to cybersecurity at individual, corporate, institutional, and governmental levels. Primarily because it's a collective responsibility of all of us. And now, with this impending warning of a big cyber attack that's going to happen, we need to be more prepared. We cannot be hunky dory and say, look, jab aayega tab dekhenge. We cannot adopt the Indian Jugaad school of management in these kinds of issues, because your Jugaad, for all you know, may never work. I mean, my 25 years of experience in this sector tells me that Jugaad never works in the digital format, because somewhere down the ladder, there are people who are far more intelligent than you out there. Next slide. So as we go forward, the idea is very, very quickly important that the legal frameworks on cyber security will have to substantially evolve and keep on getting developed as we go forward. Further, more efforts will also have to be done by the private sector. India is pretty remarkable because in our country, a lot of critical information infrastructure is both in the hands of the government as also the private sector. And hence, I think both of the stakeholders will have to increasingly start addressing these issues. Next slide. So in this context, where does a cyber law take us? Well, in this context and the experiences during the COVID-19 is telling us that our cyber law gets more and more important for all of us. Why does it get important? Next slide. It gets important because it's the only legislation that we have in India that deals with the 7 raw materials that you use on a day-to-day basis. So when you use computers, computer systems, computer networks, computer resources, communication devices, as also data and information in the electronic form, you are covered under this law. Also, Section 81 of the IT Act says that this is a special law, and the provisions of the same prevail over anything inconsistent therewith contained in any other law for the time being in force. So I think you have to start giving due respect, regard to the cyber law, because it impacts you. Next slide. It not only impacts you, it provides a legal basis for electronic ecosystem. It gives legal recognition to electronic contracts, to electronic transactions, to electronic authentication, and basically has to be a lifelong companion. You may be specializing in any discipline of law, or you may be doing a non-legal stuff. The moment you are going to be on the internet, please realize this law has got legal ramifications, and ignorance of law is no excuse in the eyes of law. You may quickly start realizing you may get sucked up in a whirlpool of action under the IT Act. Next slide, please. So, good thing to realize, the IT Act already has got various cyber crimes that are covered there. The bad thing that a majority of these cyber crimes are bailable offenses after the 2008 amendments, which have taken or sucked out the entire deterrence out of the law. So the good, encouraging news is the government of India is now looking at ways of amending the Indian information technology again, so as to make it more topical, relevant, and more practical. Next slide. I think as I come towards the closure of my thought processes, I want to highlight to you in today's world during COVID-19, why this concept of intermediary is becoming so important to all of us. The Indian cyber law has come up with the concept of intermediary, which says that intermediary is any particular person who on behalf of another person, receives, stores, or transmits any particular electronic records or provides service with respect to that records. So if you're working from home, your company becomes an intermediary. It's not just the Airtels, the Vodafones, the Geos who are intermediaries. 95% of Indian companies, the moment they give connectivity to their employees, they give phones, they give email addresses to the employees, they become intermediaries and they are duty bound to ensure compliance with the various parameters under Indian cyber law. Next slide. So the good news is that the law says if you're an intermediary, please exercise due diligence. The good news is the various parameters of due diligence have been defined under the IT Act and the rules and regulations therein. But unfortunately, the bad news is that most of the Indian companies do not comply with the IT Act. They have this supreme confidence that they will do jugaad and they will, cross the bridge when it comes and do something and get out of the potential legal ramifications. But I can tell you, IT Act is like a whirlpool. Once you get sucked into the IT Act, getting outside may actually take years before you finally come out, and that too with a lot of potential losses. Next slide. So there are two kinds of ramifications. You do your due diligence. The IT Act is like Lord Krishna in Mahabharata, who says, "Come to my Sharana and I will protect you," and gives you complete immunity. That means you comply with the IT law and you get entitled to statutory exemption from legal liability. You don't comply, no problem. Two kinds of liabilities. First liability is civil liability. You can actually be sued by damages by way of compensation, up to 5 crore rupees per contravention. Further, your top management or you individually could be sent to jail for a term ranging from 3 years imprisonment to life imprisonment, fine ranging from 1 lakh rupees to 10 lakh rupees. Next slide, please. So the Supreme Court has come up with this landmark case called Shreya Singhal versus Union of India. And in that case, they have not only upheld the constitutional validity of the Information Technology Act, but more so the constitutional validity of legal exemption provided by the statute from legal liability for intermediaries. So it's a great idea to comply with the parameters of the IT Act and potentially get less exposed to legal liability. Next slide. Well, we can then click on this slide because the Indian government has now come up with various rules and regulations under the IT Act. Next slide. These rules have further come up with various new parameters pertaining to your compliances. These are rules of 2011 in substantial, but the government has been coming up with a lot of modifications. So please ensure that you must be on the lookout of what's happening and try that your actions are in compliance with the law. Next slide. Well, at the end of the day, you have to quickly start realizing that you will be also required to now report cyber security breaches because there's now a reporting mechanism. The nodal agency, the Computer Emergency Response Team of India, has mandated all corporates and body corporates to report any cyber security incidents that would take place on their network. Next slide. You don't report, that actually becomes an offense, punishable with 1 year imprisonment and fine. Well, nobody has been punished yet, but that's no guarantee that no case would be registered against you, or in the event they come to know that there were some cyber security breaches. Next slide. Well, the fact now remains is that India is generating huge volumes of data. And unfortunately, in COVID-19 times, our data generation rates have massively increased because everybody is at home, everybody is on the internet, everybody is doing something. So they have all become global authors, global transmitters, and global broadcasters of data, and hence have been coming up with humongous volumes of data. But the appropriate legal nuances need to be addressed because the learnings of 2020 and COVID times have told us that even the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2019, pending before the Joint Parliamentary Committee, is now not adequate. The learnings are telling us new things will have to be added so as to protect the data of Indians so that the same does not tend to get misused against individuals and against the nation per se. Next slide, please. Well, at the end of the day, it's all going to be about due diligence. It's all going to be on how you're going to be preparing yourself. Uh, Supreme confidence is something that we need to give away. We cannot be supremely confident that we will be secure for our life to come. No, we will never be. What was secure yesterday is not secure today. What is secure today will definitely not be secure tomorrow. Next slide. So, in this entire stuff, you have to quickly start realizing that your effort should be please try to protect yourself, because COVID-19 times is also telling us one thing. Yes, courts are going digital. We are filing electronically. We are arguing electronically through video conferencing, and that will continue for some time. But more significantly, as people in the legal ecosystem, please be prepared for a big wave of litigation that's going to come towards the end of COVID-19. Now, that kind of huge volume of litigation is something that the legal sector would not have seen in India, at least for the last couple of decades. So, prepare yourself for the legal wave. Also, try to see if you are a company that you are not on the wrong side of the wave, because when that time comes, you may potentially be either suing someone or somebody else may be suing you because of the various unique circumstances that COVID-19 has brought forward. Next slide, please. So, due diligence, caution, care has to be a mantra. Compliance has to be the only focal point in this context when we talk about these uncertain times. COVID-19, we don't know when the cure is going to come. But we do know one thing: people's contractual obligations are getting violated left, right, and center. Yes, right now the peak of infections is going on. So people are not going to courts now. But please understand, limitation has actually been brought to a grinding halt by the Supreme Court, which means what? That they will be in a position to sue you once things slightly come better. So it's a different world that you have to be prepared for. Next slide. And in this world, you will have to also quickly start realizing that you will have to look at these newly changing ground realities as you work forward, because these realities are changing, circumstances are changing, and our legal approaches to the COVID-19 situations have also to be constantly evolving as we go forward. Next slide. Well, at the end of the day, there's nothing called a complete suraksha coverage. It's all going to be relative. But I can tell you, if you're going to comply with this cyber law, for example, in India, if you comply with the Indian Information Technology Act 2000, if you're careful, if you start adopting cyber security as a way of life, then to a large extent, I believe every stakeholder, legal or non-legal, in the digital or mobile ecosystem could potentially go ahead and safeguard themselves and their legal interests as time passes by. Next slide. Well, I think this slide is self-explanatory, so I'm quickly going to go strip this aside. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So it's all going to be what's going to be happening. I'm not a soothsayer. I'm not an astrologer. I can't tell you what's happening. But yes, I can tell you one thing for sure. Digital format is now going to be an integral part of your life, whether you like it or not. And if that is the case, awareness about cyber law, being on the right side of the law, becomes more important. From the legal fraternity, knowing cyber law becomes important because cyber law is going to have interdisciplinary impact and relationship. So you may be specializing in any area: civil, criminal, property, matrimonial, but you will increasingly find that more and more electronic evidence is going to come your way. And therefore, you need to be aware of these nuances of cyber, because your clients would expect you to be aware of the same. Next slide. So quickly, let's expand the horizons of our knowledge. Let's try to be sensitized to what's happening globally, what's happening in India. I'm seeing a huge wave of electronic evidence being created right now during COVID-19, which is going to come to courts in the coming times. It's already started coming in. So
Yeah.
as lawyers, we'll have to be prepared as we go forward. Next slide. Or we can just skip this particular slide. Well, I think this is just what people tell about my law firm, Pavan Duggal Associates. See, we work on the intersection of law and technology. And I can share you a secret. Every day is a day of learning. You can never say you know everything in this space, because every morning when I wake up, I find that I'm the most ignorant person, because the last 8 hours when I was sleeping, there was so much things happening across the world that it's hard for you to really catch up. But I think it's a fascinating space. Every day tells you know nothing, and every day you have to constantly keep on struggling to update your skill sets. Next slide. Well, I think as you go forward, I just wanted to tell you that you will have to ensure compliances. There are certain requirements for due diligences. The government of India during COVID-19 has come up with various notifications that may impact your area of activity. Please look at that on various websites of government of India, so that you can be more in sync with compliances that are applicable today. Next slide. Well, as heading the Cyber Law University as an honorary chancellor, we decided that during COVID-19, people wanted to know more things. So we've come up with various online courses. These are short courses. They require about 20 to 25 hours of yours, depending on your time. But they'll sensitize you on various different aspects, including work from home during coronavirus times, cyber law, cyber crime, cyber security during coronavirus times. Next slide. We have other courses as well, which deal with other issues that you may potentially want to know, including trying to enhance your legal skill sets, your cyber security skill sets. We have courses on cyber security law, on artificial intelligence law, on blockchain law, on Internet of Things law, apart from cyber crime and cyber law in a big manner. So we quickly realized that these things are not being taught in the curriculum. So let's try to give these self-help professional kind of courses in this regard as we go forward. Next slide. Well, I'll finally like to just wind up by one singular message. It's an uncertain world that we have embarked our journey into. COVID-19 has taken us by complete surprise. And I can promise you this is only the trailer. The main film has yet to come in. So, how are we prepared for that? What kind of mechanisms and strategies are we going to adopt? And how can you ensure that as you go across these choppy digital waters during COVID-19 and post COVID-19, how much are you going to change? How much does your mindset need to change? And more significantly, how much does your existing methodologies, approaches, and processes need to change? The writing is very clear. I think that time when we would do law and we are done for life is now gone. This is a new field. You have to constantly keep on updating your skill sets, and you don't exactly know how this legal profession will keep on evolving. A lot of lawyers are having immense problems because clients have stopped giving them money, because legal litigation is a non-essential service. So in a scenario like that, most of the lawyers are having problems. But I think in the time of adversity lies the potentiality of immense opportunity. It's time for all of us to enhance our skill sets. So please keep on enhancing your skill sets in the digital mobile ecosystem. Have a look at what's happening around you. Do not give up. Do not be depressed being sitting at home. Do not really despair because money is not coming. No problem. This is a temporary phase. And after some phase, it's going to come out. I don't know how temporary this is, whether it's a few months or a few years. Nobody can say. But one thing is very clear: the resilience within has to come out. And that resilience can only come out once we are aware of what's happening around us and then take appropriate strategies in that regard. Next slide. That brings me to the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to have any specific questions, any clarifications, any thought process. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think we had a very detailed and a good discussion today. In fact, I somehow rate myself as A plus in technology, but I have a question to put to you. You said about the smart TVs in our bedrooms. So these smart TVs these days, most of us, we've got Amazon Fire Stick. Is that safe, or is it challenging, something which is invading in our privacy?
See, the moment you have your smart TVs at your home,
Right.
please read through what kind of things, the ways your smart TVs can be hacked. Actually, hacking a smart TV is a child's play. So
Okay.
if I can hack your smart TV, I can have just a complete glimpse of what's happening around in your bedroom, and And bedroom is the place where a lot of activity would happen. Further, you'll be
True.
talking a lot of confidential stuff.
True.
Even these fire sticks, while everybody is a craze of having it, I think
Mm,
it might be a good idea to shift the smart TV onto to the drawing rooms or to common areas rather than to those areas which have a
mm,
direct connection with your privacy. Because in England there has been a documented case where a smart TV was hacked, and they were able to capture everything that the smart TV was able to see, and then that was put up online. So
right.
most of the smart TV companies would not tell you this because it goes against their business interests. But the
Of
fact remains,
course.
it's in our interest that we should be
Mm,
more smarter than smart devices. And one
true.
best thing is that to be smarter about than smart devices is stop using smart devices to the barest extent possible, because the cybersecurity standards are not up to the place. There are no
Mm,
internationally accepted norms on cybersecurity on IoT devices, and there is no law. So if you are manufacturing an IoT device, you are a law unto your own self. So I believe you have to be careful, because a lot of people may quickly realize now today in India you have these Ecos and the Alexas of the world, these small devices
yes.
of 8 to 10,000
Mm.
rupees, which
Even the
allow you
lights
to
have to be connected with
play
those now.
music or whatever. But do you
Yeah.
realize these devices are listening to us on a 24/7 basis? And
Mm.
they are constantly capturing your voices and then sending them outside. In one jurisdiction, we had this unique case of a couple, a young couple who was talking adult content in their homes, but these devices were on. And 3 days later, they got a consignment of condoms because the device actually interpreted their conversation as something that they were actually going forward, and they wanted condoms. So the device ordered the condoms, and the condoms arrived. So I think we need to be very careful of the
Right.
advances put in.
Truly. So on one side, even our lights, our air conditioners, now it's all voice connected. But you're right, we need to be all very careful and restrict the same to the living room. And yes, because so there's this question by our advocate Ramkishan Rastogi. I've put on the, is there any way to protect the system hacking?
Well, the fact remains is, Mr. Stogi, there is no way to prevent hacking. Hacking is going to be with us for the rest of our lives, like the air that we breathe, the water that we
Yes.
drink. Except that
Mm,
you have to be careful of the fact that hacking exists and that you can be hacked. The moment you have this realization, you have 50% of the battle won, because you will be very careful of what to put on your devices. And today, when people have multiple devices, I tell them, please have one device that is not going to be connected to the internet at all. Put
mm,
whatever you want to put on that device along with a good antivirus, so that it doesn't get connected and it's
mm,
safe. Otherwise, anything on all your devices is capable of being hacked. My mobile phone is a child's play to be hacked. If you're putting things on the cloud, it's an invitation to disaster, because anyone could potentially hack the same. If you are somebody who's important, or you're dealing with something important, then somebody may want to know what you are doing, what you're thinking. Therefore, hacking your systems becomes a very logical corollary. So
logical.
I think we just have to start adopting cybersecurity as a way of life, rather than to say that there's a magical wand or a magical formula against hacking. Unfortunately, there's no one computer anywhere in the world that's been made that cannot be hacked. Since every computer can be hacked, let's begin with that presumption and start protecting our data. Thanks.
Another question is by Advocate Akshay Sharma. Do we have matching cyber laws in India with other countries? If not, what are we lacking and what needs to be done?
First and foremost, India was one of the earliest nations, the 12th nation in the world, to come up with a cyber law in 2000, but that was 20 years back. We only amended the Indian cyber law once, being in 2008. Now, from 2008 till now, there's a sea of a change. So I find that the Indian cyber law, despite being good, is today
Hmm.
not topical, is not relevant,
Hmm.
and does not cover a
True.
large number of things. So it does not match very well with the latest some of the cyber laws that I'm seeing in different parts of the world. But by and large, we are still pretty good, except that it's time that we should start expanding our vision. For example, like a lot of other countries have now started coming up with dedicated laws on cyber security, we should definitely also come up with the distinctive direct laws law on cybersecurity. Our amendments to the IT Act are long overdue. Fortunately, the government has now said it's going to be amending the IT Act. It's also now coming up with a new data protection law. So hopefully by the end of the year, we should have a much more better cyber legal framework. But in
Wow.
terms of other nations, I find almost everybody seems to have a common ancestor. The common ancestor is the Untitled Model Law on Electronic Commerce and the Untitled Model Law on Electronic Signatures. Those are two fundamental twin pillars under which a majority of the national cyber laws are brought forward. But right now, with the new stage of development, I think newly emerging technologies are knocking the door. They're telling us, look, I'm not getting covered under your cyber law. So can you come up with some new legal frameworks? So, for example, the Council of Europe has now set up a committee of ministers, which is going to come up by the end of this year, a recommendation of a international regulatory regime on regulating artificial intelligence. Similarly, on IoT, the United Kingdom this year has now come up with new rules which are aimed to regulate the enhanced use of cybersecurity in the context of Internet of Things per se. So things are happening. We are pretty good, except we cannot be complacent. We have to make it better. We have to keep our law more updated so as to be more topical, relevant, and continue to be a thought leader on this issue at a global level. Thanks.
Okay. So another question is by Advocate Puneet Dhawan. He says that the data obtained from Arogya Setu app can be easily accessed by the government agencies for monitoring surveillance. No clear terms, check and balances. Is the privacy policy in compliance with the IT Act and rules?
The answer is a crystal clear no. The Arogya
Oh,
Setu app does not comply with Indian cyber law or the rules and regulations. Look at its privacy policy, and the app tends to hide more and speak less. So, for example,
okay.
it does not even comply with the basic parameters under the Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines Rules 2011 and the Information Technology Reasonable Security Practices and Procedures and Sensitive Personal Data or Information Rules 2011. See, I'm going to give you a small example of why this is so dangerous. You see, in India, we have a fundamental right to privacy under Article 21, thanks to Justice Puttaswamy judgment of the Supreme Court. So the state cannot interfere in my privacy except in accordance with procedure established by law under Article 21. There is no law passed by Parliament which authorizes the use of this Arogya Setu app. So the way you are going ahead and infringing upon people's privacy is an issue that's going to be potentially challenged in the coming times. Remember the time when they first said Arogya Setu app is going to be mandatory? And then when you look at the unlock notifications of 17th of May 2020 and then 31st of May, they said, look, it's no longer mandatory, though it's good to have, and people cannot be really penalized. So even now, this is the position. A simple example is, if you have an Arogya Setu app, I need to tell you one thing. It's collecting information about you every 15 minutes. And it tells you what it tells you in its app is that this information, if only you test positive, will be sent in an encrypted form to the server. What happens if I download
Okay.
the app on 1st of May and I get infected on the 1st of June? For 30 days, this app is collecting my data on a 24/7 basis every 15 minutes. But where is the data going? Who is accessing the data? What is where the retention is happening? Those issues have not even been talked about in the terms and conditions. So there's a lack of transparency or accountability in these exercises. Well, fortunately now they have begun talking in the right direction. They've talked about bug bounty program to encourage more people to tell us where the loopholes are. But ultimately, India is not alone. Across the world, I find the different countries have started coming up with COVID-19 apps. But at least those countries have had those apps in accordance with your national laws. But in the peculiar case of India, we don't find that the Indian Arogya Setu app complies with the parameters of laws prescribed by the Parliament. And I think that's what starts making it far more dangerous, far more difficult to start accepting it. So my suggestion is, if you really can avoid it, stop having the Arogya Setu app because of the intrinsic lack
Wow.
of appropriate compliances under applicable laws in India. Thanks.
Sure, sir. So the next question is by Advocate Akshay Sharma. Is there any centralized, autonomous, specialized agency in India responsible for regulating or updating the cyber working system?
Well, Akshay, thanks for that question. Unfortunately, there is no specific agency that you are talking in this regard. But yes, we do have a national agency which is called the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team, which is India's national nodal agency on cybersecurity. That's given various responsibilities, but the one that you're talking about is not its responsibility. It's more focused on trying to identify threats and emergencies against these cyber systems, trying to warn people. So it's warning people, for example, the recent warning of an impending cyber attack has come from certain. But at the government level, we yet have another authority. We have the National Cybersecurity Coordinator in the office of the Prime Minister, and that particular National Cybersecurity Coordinator has a job of trying to coordinate the issues on cybersecurity amongst various ministries and governmental agencies. But if you're looking at this kind of an agency which is going to be focusing on updating cyber working systems, unfortunately, India has not gone that far yet. Such kind of agencies does exist in countries like Singapore, like Vietnam and China, but we don't have any such agency because there's no legal framework, there's no dedicated cybersecurity law. But once we come up with such a legal framework, I believe this kind of authority should definitely be in existence and should be performing its functions. Thanks.
So there's an important question by Advocate Pavan Mittal. He says the law is good, however, whenever police is approached, there is a lackadaisical attitude of police authorities. Sir, your views, how can a common man get redressal of his grievance?
Unfortunately, what you've talked is 100% correct. The police does not have a user-friendly approach or a citizen-friendly or a citizen-centric approach. So most of the people in India today actually shudder to go to a police station because they realize that they're going to be made a target of a cyber attack. I've been doing a case of a girl that's got picked up during COVID-19 times by police of another state and has been arrested and has been behind bars for about 19 days before the bail could be granted to her. And the issue is all about just morphing somebody else's picture and putting it online. So I think there are no effective remedies. If you really are finding that you have got become a victim of a cybercrime, I'll encourage you that rather than going to the local police station, you should go to the central government's portal, which is being run by the Ministry of Home Affairs. It's called cybercrime.gov.in. That portal allows you to sit within the comfort of your home and thereafter go ahead and report your dedicated specific cyber incident of which you have become a victim. Alternatively, if you are a woman, you can also go to the website of the National Commission of Women and also report this kind of cyber incidents. There's a reporting mechanism there as well. In addition, if you are in your own city, for example, if you are in Delhi, then you can also go to the website of the Delhi Police, and the Delhi Police also allows you in certain cases to go ahead and register certain online FIRs. Those are your options available. Unfortunately, for a majority of the times, we do not have real information as to who is the person behind this entire cyber incident, because a lot of times the cyber crime is under the cloak of anonymity, and that cloak can only be taken off by either the police through investigation and by getting details of the service provider, or by you going ahead and doing legal proceedings. So we are doing various cases where we file these cases as John Doe litigations against unknown persons, and we try to get their identity through service providers by getting orders from a court of law. And once we get their identity, then we continue to sue them for damages, injunction, and other related reliefs as well. So these are some of the options that you currently have. But I think my vision is that cyber is getting so predominant. We need to have a cyber dedicated court in every court. Number one. Number two, I think there has to be one-stop shop point. Means anything to cybercrime, anything to do with cyber incident, I need to go to one place. I don't need to go to 10 different places. And I think there there should be an expeditious approach of trying to provide effective remedy to me. Otherwise, people's confidence in the ability of the current dispensation to give them effective remedy may potentially stand to be eroded in the coming times. Thanks.
So I think it's a basic question by Babita Singh. What all preventive measures should one take while accessing the web?
Well, Babita, if you're accessing the web, let's begin with some basic precautions. First, when you access the web, access it from a secure device. So please, first and foremost, concentrate on the security of your device, whether it's your laptop, whether it's your mobile phone. And how do you do that? By coming up with a good antivirus program or a good firewall, getting them installed. And both of these are available for free. Number two, when you're online, please don't be in a hurry to share information about your own self. You should only share information on a need to know basis, not otherwise. The entire world does not need to know what you're doing at 4 o'clock in the evening or 5 o'clock in the afternoon or whatever. Number three, do not leave behind your photographs, your numbers, your details on social media. The chances of that being picked up and misused against you is very high. Number four, try never to publish anything on the web when you are in an emotional state of mind, when you are either emotional, angry, or you're not your normal self, because the chances are that you may actually publish something and act in haste and repent at leisure in the coming times. Number six, please realize that internet as a paradigm never sleeps, never forgets. So whatever you're going to put up once on online is going to be there for a long, long period of time. So be careful of what you publish. Do not publish violation of the law. That means don't put up defamatory, derogatory, abusive, humiliative content. Do not create false handles, because tomorrow they could potentially land up yourself in trouble. It's a great idea to get some of these Google alert services which are available free of cost, so that you can get an idea what is being mentioned about you online the last 24 hours or so. So that could give you a good sample of how people are thinking or talking about you. And finally, we'll have to start adopting cybersecurity as a way of life on a daily basis. The web is a great paradigm. It can be used for both positive and negative. Try using and focusing on the constructive elements rather than on the destructive elements. And if you think that you're going to be completely anonymous online, think again. You always land up leaving behind some footprints or the other, which can potentially be used by law enforcement. Thanks.
So another question which I also feel like, though I have a Apple device now, but I feel that these softwares are, and the question is also the same, that most of the software used by us, MS Word, Photoshop, and others, so many others, are pirated ones. Original ones are so expensive that no one would buy it and use it. How liable are we?
Well, the legal answer is you are totally liable, because if you're using a pirated software and tomorrow your system gets potentially examined or gets confiscated and it's pirated software, it actually becomes an offense under the Copyright Act. But the fact is, when the offense gets done by the country as a whole or by huge chunks of its population, then how do you expect that to be monitored? So I think by and large, given the fact that the original licenses are so very expensive, a majority of people are using pirated versions. But I would suggest that if you are at least in any official work, try using original stuff, because you cannot, as a lawyer, be working on pirated software and sending them some drafts or some documents that's not from an official stuff. That will not augur very well for your reputation, for your standing. But more significantly, I think companies have also realized it's impossible to go after the entire population. So the chances of them going after you is very, very minimal. But yes, if you are somebody who's important, or if you are somebody targeting whom may potentially give a salutary, exemplary message, then you could potentially be targeted by these kinds of companies. But by and large, it's always a good idea. But now with so much of these free software available, these online software is available, the paradigm is changing. The world is gone enough to say, look, go and buy very expensive software. you can start using a lot of this open source free software that's available. Of course, that comes with its own catch, but still much better to be going under the EULA or any other kind of an open source standard rather than trying to face a potential challenge that you could potentially be examined or raided and found that you're using pirated software. It's your own individual computer, that's fine, that's not an issue. But supposing you're running an LPO or you're running 25, 30 people all having pirated software, that's the time you become a fertile target for being potentially raided and focused upon by these big software companies. Thanks.
Right, so these are the questions I'll just throw to my member secretary too. So thank you so much for answering all our questions. Sir is also here. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Pavan ji. जैसा ये श्रेया कह रही थी that we were considering ourselves that we are that much computer savvy, we know all the securities, we are already taking care of. But after listening to you, really, we need, and you have correctly said that we need to be smarter than all these smarter devices which we are using. Otherwise, we all can land up in some sort of trouble. No doubt, as you have rightly said, that our government has right now promised that they would come up with some sort of cybersecurity laws by the end of this year. But again, it is collective responsibility of all of us. As in the physical world, जो भी हमारा possessions हैं, जो भी हमारे essentials हैं, valuables हैं, we do keep them in lock and key. Then why not the data which is there? We need to take care of that also. We cannot leave it to the government or to other institutions and all that they will take care of us. All of us, it's definitely the collective responsibility of all of us. And the questions which you have answered right now, very rightly you pointed out what should be the do's and don'ts, and whenever you are in some sort of emotions, you should not be, say, putting up or publishing some data on the social media that definitely can be taken use of at a later point of time against you in one way or the other, depending upon the relationship which you are having with other persons and those persons who would be accessing the data. So definitely it was a wonderful session. And as you have said that this particular situation wherein we are in, we do not know how temporary it is, how long it is going to go, and definitely at the end of it, on the other side of it, we are going to have lots and lots of litigation. You rightly pointed out that Supreme Court at present put a halt on the limitation aspect, and definitely on the other side of this break, you will say, or whatever situation you will say, we are going to have lots and lots of litigation. And it is because of that, all of us, we are trying to prepare ourselves that so far as those legal aid seekers are concerned, all those persons who belong to poor strata of society, who falls under Section 12 of Legal Services Authorities Act, we should be in a position to help them out of that particular situation, either as they are victim, or in case they are victim, then we need to file some sort of complaints, or even if they are accused, we have to defend as per the statutory right which they possess, and as Legal Service Authority, it is our obligation to defend them. So definitely we are trying to evolve ourselves. We are trying to keep pace with the latest changes in these cyber laws, and you have definitely given a valuable inputs and insight to all of us. I do hope that all my panel lawyers, they have enriched from your expertise, your experience. Thank you very much. I do not have words to say thanks to you, because the entire content itself shows the amount of work which you have put in for bringing us this presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
Truly. Thank you, MS sir, and thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Pavan.
In fact, thank you for your kind words. And I'd also like to take this opportunity that it was great that you could give me this opportunity to talk to your various panel lawyers and other stakeholders. And specific thanks to you on behalf of Cyber Law University for being an academic partner. This has been a great initiative. And I think the more we are able to talk about this and generate more awareness, the great it will be in sync with your the visions and the ideas of your authority. Thank you, sir, once again.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Stay safe.
Yeah, thank you. We'll conclude this.